Welcome to the main stage. Great to have you on board with us. First, let's find out where you're calling in from. Martha, we'll start with you. Great to have you on board with us. Where are you calling in from today?
Hi there. Thanks. I'm really happy to be here. I'm from the Bay Area in California.
Great to have you on board with us. And Kevin, we've got you as well. Great to see you again, Kevin. Kevin, where are you calling in from today?
Denver, Colorado, beautiful Rockies.
There you go. I love it. Great to have you both here. I know you have a presentation for us, and then after that presentation, I'll be back to facilitate some Q&A. I'm sure our audience will have some questions for you. So in the meantime, Kevin and Martha, I'm going to hand it over to you. The floor is yours. Looking forward to your presentation.
Great. Just let me know if everybody could see the slides.
It's coming up now. Yes, we can see it. You're good to go.
And are they moving? I'm going back and forth. I want to make sure they're moving.
Yes, they are moving.
Great, because I'm trying to see. So there you go. First of all, welcome everybody. Appreciate everybody's time this morning. We've got a packed agenda in 30 minutes. And I'm Kevin Lombardo, CEO and President of DORN. And I'm glad to partner with Martha today, who is an expert in wellness and well-being and taking care of employees and has worked with some very large organizations. So we're going to jump right in. And we're going to take a different tack because this is a safety conference. But what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about how total worker health really helps avoid ergonomic injuries by looking at things like mental health and wellness. But before we do, I get the shameless plug. For those who are not going to meet with us this week, DORN's been around 21 years. We are a wellness-based injury prevention and ergonomic company. And through a series of services, our whole focus is to keep people out of the healthcare system and out of the workers' comp system. We've worked with over 120,000 employees and have saved employers over $100 million. You can learn more by reaching out to us or during the meetings. So again, let's get into what we're doing today. So I want to talk about really what we're trying to accomplish today. What's really happening in the workforce? And what's going on in that. And so I'm going to kind of move these slides along a little bit so that we can just dive right in. Let's see if this is moving. Not sure that I see that moving yet. Oh, there we go. So we're going to take a total worker health approach. We're going to do something different. We're going to talk about more mental health and wellness as the impacts on injuries. And I'm glad to partner with Martha here today because she brings a depth of knowledge in the mental health and wellness arena to help us understand how they impact ergonomic injuries. So I'm going to jump right into the first set here. And first, I'm going to just give you a little bit of data. You have to forgive me. I'm going through two different screens here to get to the slides. But as you know, this is data that you already know. And we've seen a lot of organizations that have told us they've seen a significant increase in the decline of overall wellness among their employees over the last 12 to 24 months in reality. And we all know what that's stemming from. So we don't have to get into the causes of that. I think today what we want to really talk about is the solutions and how we can really affect some real change. I think I skipped ahead one. There we go. And if you start thinking about your workforce, 80% of companies that we survey a lot of people at DORN. We do surveys all year long. And there's a lot of people that have indicated they have a strong hybrid workforce. Now, obviously a lot of service industries, call centers, where you have different types of folks we're not talking about manufacturing there, but you could see what's happening is that there's 80% saying they're a hybrid workforce. I'm working from home. I've been working from home for 2 years. You could probably hear my dog in the background barking. She joins every conference call I'm ever on. You could see that 17% are 100% remote and 3% are still on site. So there's a dynamic going on here. The nature of work has changed. And the nature of what we do as safety professionals has changed too. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. And so when you see what the top complaints that employees are starting to have, neck, shoulder, back pain, that's the ergonomic stuff, right? That's still there. Let's see what else is coming in. Fatigue, overall stress, mental health challenges, work-life balance. We heard about the Great Resignation. It was 2 or 3 months in a row last year. Now, if you look at what happened, that was a lot of service-type industries, hospitality, or type of roles that maybe didn't have the same level of pay as other type of jobs. And people just said, you know what, it's not worth it to put myself through this, the challenges, the stressors, wherever they come from. But these are things that we're all facing today. And so when you start thinking about safety initiatives and the impact on ergonomic injuries, I urge you to start thinking about things like fatigue, stress, mental health challenges, and how you incorporate that. And I'm going to fly through these slides because I want to get to Martha to give us some ideas as to things that we can do as organizations to help address that. Okay, the future of work. What is the future of work? 85% of the jobs don't exist yet. We know that. That's every generation that we've ever seen. We could see that all the jobs that are going to happen in the next few years just don't exist at this point in time. Having a little trouble with my screenshots here, guys. Give me 1 second. Okay, much better. 73% of teams are going to start working remotely, or if they haven't already, we're seeing that in spades. So a lot of organizations that send people home, they still are keeping people at home. 66% of employees expect to work in a hybrid model. I mean, we're seeing this stuff. I think we all know this. So let's get through these slides. And let's talk about ergonomic risk. We're going to break this down into 3 sections: ergonomic risk, mental health, and wellness. So from an ergonomic risk standpoint, what do we have? These are things that you already know, things that you're here to talk to people about, like myself and other organizations that you're going to meet with today. So a lot of the injuries are starting to happen from home. How are you going to have it? We saw a lot of the projects are remote workers, we're talking about wearable technology, talking about office people. 2 to 3 respondents are suffering physical pain from working at home. 1 in 4 computer-centric jobs are starting to see RSIs, and we have to start taking that into a bigger account, and we're going to talk about how you do that. And most Americans, we're now spending more time. If I'm working from home, I'm spending more time on the screen than I ever did before. And then if you take a look at the on-site workers, these are the things that we know: prolonged repetitive attacks, sustained awkward positions, things like that. So what can we do about it? There's things that we can do. There's things that you're going to explore today and tomorrow and the next day as you talk to different organizations, whether it's body mechanics training, whether it's ergonomic software. Some of you are here looking for back-end software, Ergo Eyes, it's ergonomic trainings, exoskeletons, wearables, those type of things. These are all the things that we know that you're all looking at. I want to point out what's on the right: a 226% increase in soft tissue issues post-lockdown. Well, let me tell you what that's about. So there was a study done by Axiom Medical, and they came back and they started seeing some trends. Now that 226 relates to German soccer players that after the lockdown, when they came back, their soft tissue issues just skyrocketed. There was a study done at the NFL. There was a lockout back in 2011 or 12. And historically, there's usually 8 Achilles tendons blowouts in a year. In the first 2 weeks after that lockout, when there was no conditioning going on, the trainers weren't available to the athletes, so forth, there were 10 in the first 2 weeks. So the question becomes, your industrial athletes, what's happening to them? and how could we effectively address them. Now, obviously, most people are back to work fully, but they came back in deconditioned states. We saw a 12 to 16% increase in our clients' MSD related issues. I'll give you one example. We have a client that we worked with that had, we were in 17 sites. The last week before COVID, we had 8 work-related issues that we saw people for across the 17 site network. The first full week we were back in all 17 sites, we saw 84 work-related issues, mostly soft tissue issues, because of that deconditioning. It's not going away, because although injuries themselves actually tended to go lower during the first few months of COVID, as people were more careful, there were other things happening, they're starting to increase again, and we're starting to see that. We have a client, their average cost of claim over the last 5 years has gone from $16,000 to $19,000 to $24,000. It's a pretty significant issue that we all have to address. So those are the ergonomic issues. Those are some of the things that you're going to be wrestling with this week as you talk to people. So let's talk about, here's a case study. It's an airline that we worked with. We were there 8 months before COVID, worked with baggage handlers. And I won't get into everything we did there, but you can see some of the programs and some of the interventions and how we were able to address it. Reducing pain, reducing stress levels, and Martha's going to talk about that in a little bit. Improving overall morale. 85% of the people said it had improved morale. And out of a subgroup of about 200 people we worked with, the total savings were about $200,000. So having the right ergonomic programs that address more than just risk reduction. That's the point I'm trying to make here, is where you're going to get the real bang for your buck. So let's talk about mental health. And I'm going to click through and get all the slides up so that we can. I think that's all I think there's one more. Forgive me for a second. Yes. 90% of the workers indicated during COVID, it's affecting their home lives. The stress that we lived through, the stress that we're living through today with Ukraine, with world events, with social unrest, with high gas prices, with inflation, whatever it is that triggers your employees. It's not all of them. Maybe for some people, it's all of them. There's things that are going on. Their depression has increased. There's a lot of issues that have really come to play. And as you can see, that nearly 60% of adults with a mental illness didn't receive any mental health services the previous year. So there's a lot of issues that we have to wrestle with. And when you start talking about ergonomic injuries, you have to take into account, think about that total worker health philosophy of looking at employees holistically. We have to start thinking about things in a different manner. And I'm here to urge you all to do that. So what can we do about it? And we've only got a couple more slides, and then we're going to get into Martha's part of this. Increase on self-care support. That could be body mechanics. It could be self-care techniques as far as doing deep tissue work on themselves. It could be giving them other avenues to portals that they can just take care of themselves. Employees can take care of themselves. Connect with your wellness people. We did a think tank. Martha and I actually did a think tank probably 3, 4, 5 months ago. And we did, I think there were 30 wellness directors. I could tell you there were about 4 or 5 of them in that group that said, you know, this is the first year I sat down with my safety people and we started combining our numbers. We started looking at things together. Still have our separate programs, but how do we make them work together? So bring these type of things. I'm not going to read through all of these, but bring these type, because we don't have a lot of time today, but bring all these things and take a look at this. You know, you all have EAP systems. EAP systems can be really good, or they can be so-so. Work with your wellness folks. Say, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing the stress of, you know, that one client with 17 locations, they're a mattress maker. After they came back and they're still running into supply chain issues. They're per site, they're about 30,000 mattresses behind demand. What's the stress that puts on supervisors to get more mattresses out? The employees who are asked to work harder, faster. We visited a potential client here in Colorado about 4 years ago, and they rehabbed gigantic engines for tractor type, not just little tractors, but those monster trucks you see on the road. And their units per month, I'm picking these numbers, they're pretty relatively close, for like 20. Then corporate said, okay, we're going to go for 24. Then we're going to go for 28. Those were their targets. They weren't able to add more people. Think about the stress that that puts on your organization and the breaking points. And so those are the things I think we need to think about. And so let's now turn our attention quickly to the mental health side. I'm going to skip, I think I skipped over the case study because I really want to get into, and I think these slides will be available to people. The case study was a client where we basically created a virtual platform when we were asked to leave because of COVID, where we were spending 70 hours a week on site in 11 different sites. We were asked to leave. A month later, we get a call that says, hey, you can't come back on site, but we have problems. What are you going to do? So we created the virtual self-care program, and the results that we saw were very similar to our on-site results. We were seeing 70% pain level, 77% pain level reduction, improvement in sleep patterns, reduction in stress levels, higher morale by giving people the tools at home to be able to take care of themselves, whether they're at their screen, whether they're at the ball game, sitting in the stands, those type of things. So that was the case study that I just bypassed quickly. Let's get into the wellness. Majority of adults, we saw 29 pounds gained on average. I'm looking down because I'm reading some other stats. 15% increase in BMI, 6% decrease in strength, 5% shoulder and knee strains, increase in strains. Ergonomic issues from people who went home, came back, or people who are working from home and are still working from home and maybe don't have the ergonomic setups that maybe you and I have, that they're still maybe working from their couch, maybe they're still working from their kitchen table. Things aren't set up well. You could see that diet and exercise went out the window. Now, I have 4 dogs, so I was able to walk around the block every day with my dogs and get that exercise when I needed that break. And as you can see, a lot of people are struggling just to make ends meet. So what can we do about this? Wellness solutions. It comes from the leadership. Looking at your benefits, talking to your wellness. If you have a wellness organization, talking to them. If you have just a benefits organization with an EAP, talking to them, so that maybe all you're able to do as a safety person is be able to communicate to your employees, hey, we have these programs. If you're feeling stressed, we know you're feeling stressed, because remember, they're going to cause ergonomic injuries. Fatigue management systems. I know there's a couple of people here that in your meetings over the next few days, you're interested in learning about fatigue management, fatigue identification. We're finding fatigue is really coming into the forefront. And I'll tell you, I went to a webinar, or I'm sorry, an actual conference 3 years ago on fatigue. 65% of the people there were academics. The rest were either consultants or a couple people that were practitioners. Today, I would say it'd probably be about 60% were actually organizations that now recognize fatigue as a risk factor for ergonomic injuries. Access to wellness coaches, stress management, resilience programs, financial wellness programs. In this era where a lot of people lost their jobs, remember, up to 40 to 44 million people lost their jobs. Yes, many of them got that back, but many took jobs that were for less money. So now their home life is different. How they live is different. There's a lot of things still happening. My wife looks and she's seeing, my God, foreclosures are going up. What's going on? We see that unemployment's low. We see that wages are increasing. Inflation now is increasing past the wage. All these stressors are really playing havoc on people. And so I really urge you all to continue to look at different things. So what I want to say is we're going to take a holistic approach. And what I want to do now is I'm going to ask Martha to kind of step into the arena here and answer some questions that have kind of come through that really are around what she's able to bring to the table in the wellness. So Martha, in your experience, maybe help the folks understand, how do they break down those silos? We're dealing with safety directors of very, very large organizations. How do we break down those silos between the wellness side, where you came from, and the safety side, and maybe give us some examples of how you were able to help do that?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Great question. And again, great to be here. And I'm happy to be here. You touched on this earlier, Kevin, and I think it really comes down to sharing the vision on how wellness and safety are really all about the employee experience and engagement and the impact that the two actually have on employees and the impact on the organization. Both are looking to create healthy environments and healthy, productive employees who feel that the organization's investment is in their overall care. And so really, they're not very different. It's like looking at two sides of the coin and understanding that it is the same coin, and that coin being that employee. So recognizing that and being able to come to an agreement on that is incredibly important and powerful, is what I have found. Both also recognizing something of these needs. There's management and leadership. You mentioned that as part of one of the solutions that needs to be there, is both having this understanding and this agreement that leadership's buy-in onto what is important is there. The employees' participation, right? Employees need to have skin in the game to actually be able to understand and know what their benefits are, what these services are, and how do they tap into them? When do they know that they're there, and when can they use them, and how do they access them? Going back to the issue identification, being able to look at things such as claim data, other information that both sides of these organizations, both sides of the teams have, being able to pull those together as resources and being able to identify what are the actual issues, what's the why of what we're trying to solve for. Assessing it, doing an inventory, I think, is a huge step in the right direction for everyone involved on what are the programs and services that we currently have. What are the utilization levels of those programs? How do we make them better? Do we even have the right solutions? And then being able to do a gap analysis against that. And prevention is huge. One of the pieces you were describing, you talked a lot about deconditioned individuals. And it's amazing in my experience what I have seen with folks of being in that deconditioned state, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, because they have not had the tools, the resources that they've been able to tap into because either they didn't know about them or they weren't available to them. And being able to develop those skills, those life coping skills, and putting them into play has left them in a deconditioned space where now, as you were saying, there are many folks where they're working twice as hard because there's less employees. And so they are having to do double duty in their jobs with equal or less pay, and then still having to deal with the challenges of their own family life as well, too. So being able to understand that is super important. But there is control in there, right? And that's where, again, it comes down to having these programs, having these solutions in place. What can we control, right? And what is within our control, and what are those external factors that aren't in our control, and as much as we can master. Training is huge. A big part of this, what I have seen, is once you have those tools in place, educating employees on those tools, and then training them on those tools, giving them that safe space to learn and to use those training tools. And then, of course, as always, evaluating, is this program working? I love one of the things that just always sticks with me, Kevin, is you have your data to show the success metrics to your organizations to show that the impact is there of what's working and what isn't. And for myself, when I have worked with organizations as well, being able to show the impact of the work that we do and the ripple effect of where it impacts the rest of the organization is just as important.
Oh, that's great. I'd like to switch gears, if I could, Martha, a little bit, because I want to tap into you, as a former global wellness manager of a large organization dealing with multiple cultures across the globe. Let's bring it back now to the U.S., where, because I know we have clients that they may have Hispanic speaking, English speaking, Vietnamese, South Africans, multiple cultures working in the same environment. Maybe give us some guidance around, because again, we're talking to safety directors, but it could be on the wellness side. I don't think it matters when you're dealing with multiple cultures. How have you found you're able to communicate the messaging to multiple cultures either globally, because we have some global wellness or safety directors, but even within a single organization, a single site that might have 4 different sets of cultures and possibly 4 different generations who all have different learning styles and adoption styles of technology or whatever it may be. So maybe give us some advice on that side of it that people could take away.
Yeah, it's a great question, Kevin, because it's interesting that you say this. Even as you say, having worked with a global organization, what I have found is even taking one site in Austin, for example, if there are multiple different teams, and whether people are transplants, whether they've lived there all their lives, age demographics, all of that is your employees and the segmentation of your people and understanding the different profiles that you have of them. And not to say that people are in a box, but being able to understand, when you can understand your population from a segmentation of sorts, you're able to then come up with profiles for solutions that people feel are underneath what I call a globalized philosophy with localized solutions. And that localization is that customization that me as an individual is suited for me, just as a solution is also available to you and meets you where you're at. So it's really important to have that understanding of the overarching philosophy. What do we as an organization believe is important for our people? And then being able to do the double click down on that to what those solutions are. And as you mentioned, we have this amazing thing, technology, which has pushed us, many organizations, into areas that we never thought we'd be at, right? There were ideas or concepts that we thought were out there. Oh, that'll come 5-7 years. And then, wow, COVID hit and we had to put the pedal to the metal with those solutions and to do turnarounds, right? So being able to understand that there are still those who like to have that face-to-face. There are those that will take an application, an app, and use that, whether it's for their mental health as an example. But then there are those who like to have that one-on-one, that in-person contact with people as well, too. So understanding when you're making that investment, because as much as we like to say we want to give everyone everything, understanding where your investments are going for your population to understand what speaks to their hearts.
And that's probably where organizations can tap into other organizations, because companies have limited resources. I talked to somebody a couple of weeks ago who said, yeah, I've got turnover. My safety directors, 3 sites. I have nobody there. So with limited availability of resources internally, looking at inexpensive apps, looking at consulting firms that can help fill those gaps. I'm sure that makes sense to you.
Absolutely. And what I was just going to say about that was that's the great thing about partnering with other teams, HR, benefits, whomever, workplaces, whomever your other organizations are, because guess what? They have relationships with services too. So when you pull all of your resources together, that's part of that inventory that I spoke of. When you can pull all of your inventory together, you may realize that you thought you had to go out and buy a solution when in fact another team actually has something that you can leverage. And so really understanding that and then being able to tap into it and explore what that looks like for your organization.
Well, great. Martha, I appreciate your input. Folks, I want to thank everybody for being here. Do we have any other questions from the audience?
Actually, we do. We're going to bring Tony up onto the stage. He has a question for you, Kevin and Martha, so we'll bring Tony up. Thank you for this conversation, by the way. A lot of great insight there. There's Tony. Tony, welcome back.
Hey,
I know
Tony.
you have a question for Kevin and Martha. Please ask your question, Tony.
Sure. So obviously, we have a lot of challenges in the EHS field, and with the changes the pandemic has brought upon us. With more employees working from home and being in front of their screens more, as opposed to going to conference rooms for meetings, what do you all think about blue light glasses for our white-collar workforce, and maybe the same way we've looked at safety glasses for our traditional workforce? It's an issue that I've looked into, but haven't had a lot of time to dig into. So what do you all think about that?
That's a great
Martha,
question.
you want to take that, because you worked with a lot of technology developers and people like that.
Yes, and I'm a huge proponent. If I am actually wearing my own glasses that are blue light, so it is a game changer. And it's kind of funny to use that term because that's the kind of company I used to work with, was a gaming industry, but it is truly a game changer for folks to have glasses that help reduce that eye fatigue. I would also say, there is, again, the training behind them, when to use glasses, when not to, giving your eyes a break, right? Making sure that people have that understanding of being able to look away from their screen at certain times, come back to it again. Those are huge things where, and this comes with every piece of, whether it's a technology or a tangible item such as your glasses, is knowing how to use them, when to use them, and what in addition to them can you use to help support that piece. Don't just think of it as just like one solution. There's a whole aspect around it of understanding eye health, for example. That's a great thing to help people understand. And then here's the why that we're doing this with these glasses. That builds upon that thoughtfulness that you bring to the solution, which is absolutely key for your employees to know that you've been thoughtful, and honestly, your organization knowing how you spent the money well.
Yeah, and I think, Tony, just to add to that a little bit separately, is educating the folks on, and that can be done through desktop platforms and stuff, but educating people on micro breaks, getting up periodically every hour and stretch a little bit, walk around, get your eyes off the screen. It is terrible how much time probably you and I and Martha and others that are in our space, because I could see your background, you could see my background and Martha's, that we're just online. And it's important to, if you even have the glasses, to take those breaks, do some exercises, and just, rest your mind. It's, for people working in a warehouse and on a production line, there's the rest and recovery. Well, we need rest and recovery too, periodically throughout the day, not just at the end of the day. So I think combining the two really helps.
Mm-hmm.
Tony, that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Tony, thank you. Appreciate you coming on with your question, and I'm sure we'll see you again throughout our summit. I believe we have one more audience question coming up on to the plenary, and we've got Joshua coming up onto the stage here for a question for you, Martha and Kevin. There you are. Welcome to the main stage. Great to have you on board. What's your question today?
Thank you. My question is, how do we maintain a strong safety culture in a predominantly temp labor organization? When we have 60 to 75% of our labor in our warehousing is temp labor. So there's the constant turnover in that world in trying to maintain a strong safety program.
Yeah, I'll give you my perspective, because we've had this question from not only we're working with a new client out west who is a warehouse, and 50% of their employees are temp and the rest are permanent, as well as construction companies who are, I'm the GC. I don't control, Martha's company, who's my sub. So you get similar type things. And honestly, I the best I could do is partnerships. I think talking to your vendor, because the temp labor will have a higher turnover than what you might have if you were hiring them, but partnerships and having them invested in your safety protocols, having them participate in that, having people go through some body mechanics training when they come on board, if that's what's important, if that's an important issue as far as proper body movements, proper push, pull, lift, those type of things. Having them go through that, but having that cost maybe burdened by the group that, is supplying the temps. Because at the end of the day, you're still going to have that turnover. But if they're not having those injuries, because as you know, especially with temp labor, you probably get a lot of people, they just disappear. You don't know what happened to them, but they may have gotten injured, right? But they're not coming to you because it's not you, but maybe they'll stay. We see retention increase when those programs are in place. And then the temps feel like they're part of the organization. They're not the temps, right? And so it shouldn't be all on you, but if you have an orientation program, just instilling a couple of those, hey, we're going to teach you the proper body mechanics, and we're going to coach you if we see you doing it wrong. And going back to the organization who supplies the temps and saying, this has to be a partnership, because you all have to bring us the people who, are going to be, at least while they're here, even if they're only here for 2 months, while they're here, they're going to abide by our policies, our situations, our rules. And so I think engaging them and making them feel part of that organization helps a little bit. I don't think it really arrests every issue you're talking about, but I think it really helps, because if they're part of the safety meetings, if they're part of the safety culture, and if you see that Johnny over there is just not paying attention, then you got an easier decision. You call the temp agency and say, Johnny's not working out, let's get somebody else. And you don't have some other issues you might have if you wanted to let somebody go. Martha, I know that wasn't really your area of responsibility, but maybe had additional thoughts on that and incorporating temps, because I think you probably worked with a lot of subcontractors.
Yes, and then similar to what you described, Kevin, was getting them on board, just as you would with your internal other teams of workplaces or facilities or HR. It's the same relationship, if not more so, with those organizations that you are hiring your temps through, and getting on the same page of what is important to your organization, and making sure that they carry that through in their programming and in their communications and training with their individuals.
Great information there. That answer your question, Joshua?
Yes, it did. The slight follow-up would be, would you suggest, because you used kind of the sports analogy, that bring on the temps, because we don't know where they come from, so oftentimes we don't know what their work experience was, is creating a slower process of what they do physically in their first few days?
I think so. I think, we do a lot of work hardening programs and physical capacity testing. Again, don't know your organization, don't know budgets, don't know all of that. So I'm speaking more globally here than specific to your situation. But depending on the nature of the work, absolutely, because maybe they fulfill some of the roles that are, lower physical demands, so that you could identify, okay, I've got 30 temps, 10 of them look like they can do something different. And if you don't have the resources, you can say, okay, I can see that 10 of them can move into the tougher jobs. Or if you're working with an organization that can do not physical capacity testing in the sense of hire, don't hire. I mean, that could be what you want to do. That I'll leave that to your decision, your organization's decision. But other physical capacity, because we do some physical capacity testing, not for the hire, don't hire, but for placement. Where should they go in the organization? What can they lift? Where, and it just depends on, do we have those 5 different job categories that allow us to move people to different roles based on their strength? Because I'll tell you, if you hire me, you better put a broom in my hand, because there's nothing else I'm going to be able to lift that's of, significance. But you would look at me and say, okay, yeah, he could sweep the floors, but now I think he could do some of the lower physical capacity, packing, pick and packs, those type of things. So yeah, I think it all comes into play. Again, if your permanent employees are under that type of review and support, as Martha said, your temp employees, to some level of that, maybe not full blown, should be participating in that organization. The warehouse we're working with out west, we have a whole program in place, but their temps participate in a small piece of it, because the rest of it is geared towards the permanent employees. So I think there's ways to get there.
Great conversation here. Yeah, Joshua, thank you so much for your question. I'm sure we'll see you again throughout our summit. Appreciate your question. Martha and Kevin, thank you so much. Action-packed session here. I know it was quick, but you got a lot of great information out there. Appreciate you coming on board and sharing what you know, what's working and what's not working. And I hope to see both of you throughout the next couple of days. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for
Appreciate
having us.
everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you so
Stay
much.
well.
Appreciate it.